question on the
Sure.
rapid depreciation of asset front, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I've heard you guys talk a lot, and I say you guys, like, I mean, honestly, I
Mm-hmm.
feel like you, Vince, Blaine, Ian,
Yeah.
Alex, you guys are like the new, remember like the whole like Joe Rogan, like intellectual dark web thing
Mm-hmm.
that
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
kind of stupid? You guys are
Yes.
actually doing that in like a real way.
Thank
But here's the question though. So you see all the bots on Twitter talking about how Europe, because there's such a thing, is going to dump $2 trillion of our bonds, right?
you.
First question, hey, check it out. Guess who's the largest bondholder of US debt recently? And guess who's been leveraging up on it a ton, right?
That'd be the
Now,
Bank of England.
I'm gonna bring and all their acolytes, right? All their
Yep.
acolytes. So
And
now
all
I'm
this,
gonna
and
bring
I've been on the story, for 3 years, Timo. You
yeah,
know
oh,
that,
no, I know you have. I know, but like I'm feeding your sheet music back to you, man. But like
right? I know.
but then bring Judy Shelton into the mix, and I read her book, and the specter, the idea of the United States potentially offering, partially gold bond backs, long dated bonds
Mm-hmm.
sometime in the summer. I've heard some folks talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
What if that's more real than we think? And now the Brits are looking at this saying, holy crap, like these things are going to be worth trash if I don't dump this stuff. So if I'm going to shoot this shot, I got to shoot it now because
Mm-hmm.
they're going to
That is a
they're going to
very
pull the
interesting
firing pin
interpretation.
right out of this gun and I'm not going to be able to use it anymore.
Well, and that's why we're watching. That's why they want the stablecoin market to grow. I think, and I've posted this on Twitter now at least twice, that I think what Trump is setting up with, I mean, why do we, again, let's tie into why hasn't Trump just walked away from Ukraine? There's at least
I was
three
wondering
reasons.
that this morning.
Yeah.
Yep.
Think about it this morning. Why? Think about it. Why? Well, because he can't, because he's got a Congress and a Senate that would impeach him for being Donald Trump tomorrow if he did this. And he doesn't have the political capital of enough of the groundswell of the American normie space to take him forward. He has to make the tough calculation of, do I lose the midterms and then lose everything, or do I end the war today? He can end the war. All he has to do is walk away. Or does he continue to play the game, the process of teaching the American people just who the real enemy actually is by over and over and over again, walking up to peace, walking up the escalatory ladder towards peace, and then forcing them to go to war, forcing them to come out and say, no, we really want war. And make the final move that would be the big move would be to finally steal those Russian foreign exchange reserves, which would invalidate the European Union and all as a viable member of the global financial system, right?
Yeah, 100%.
They under the Biden junta, they wanted us to go first. We kept saying no. Now you've even got bits and pieces of the European Union saying we can't do this, including countries like Denmark and the Netherlands. That's hilarious, right? Because they're breaking ranks. Notice how it's France, Germany, and the UK are closing ranks around this stuff, right? Trying to keep the tracksuit midget in power in Kiev. And I refuse to call it Kiev. It's Kiev. Get the fuck over yourselves. So the when you lay it out that way, you realize, yeah, they have these $2.5 trillion, and it's more than that, by the way. 2.3 trillion is not the truth. It's much more than that. When you look at the entirety of the EU plus all the British proxies, I think the number's close to $4 trillion. I could bring it up on my other screen and get you the number, because you know that I have the TIC report broken down by region, and the way I've broken it down, it is the last number is $4.128 trillion in central bank reserves controlled by Europe / offshore Britain.
Okay.
And it's enormous. They've gone on the biggest buying spree of American debt since Powell started tightening dollar liquidity globally in the summer of 2021, tracked from September of 2021 to today. They have bought nearly $1.5 trillion net of US Treasury debt. And the biggest holder overall is by far the Bank of England. The Bank of England on its own is bigger than China. when you add in the Caymans and the British Virgin Islands and the this and that and everything else, it's an enormous sum. Then we start getting into the money that's in the Caymans that's, funding the basis trade and in the financial plumbing, not in some, this is just central bank reserves. So they're so tied into us that there's no fucking way they could do this. Because look, here's the bigger question. What's the big trigger for all this? And who's detonating that trigger? They say they're going to do that. They're doing that as a response to the Japanese normalizing monetary policy. Now, I've been on this story since the day Kuroda came out and said, I'm stepping down and my hand-picked puppet is not taking over. Which was the first time that a non-British backed trained guy was going to run the BOJ. But the Japanese normalizing monetary policy, taking away the Japanese yen carry trade, which is how this money has been geared up and levered up over time, and how the US dollar shadow banking system has been levered up over time. But that dollar shadow banks in Eurodollar offshore system falls back into Europe. So you kind of have to watch both to understand as to whether or not Japan is working with the United States or still in the throes of City of London. What I'll tell you is the following. Politically, we have the equivalent of Georgia Maloney in charge, or Donald Trump in charge, who's going to deport all the Muslims from Japan.
In Japan,
okay,
right.
Now you have that's number one. Number two, you have Ueda at the BOJ has been slowly but surely normalizing monetary policy and allowing the long end of the yield curve to rise, the Japanese yield curve to rise, and everybody's out there screaming, "Oh my God, Japan is going to die!" Yeah, exactly. And who's bitching about this? It's all the same people that are always bitching about it. So the question then is, who benefited most from the Japanese yen carry trade? So when I sat down on Sunday I was thinking about this on Sunday, and I was like trying to come up with an angle for the Sunday market report for my patrons. I'm like, oh, hold on. So the dollar rapidly depreciated versus the euro and the pound in the first 6 months of 2025, right? And that was a strategy by the Trump administration. They were selling dollars to buy gold, and crash the LBMA, take control of all this gold, trash the dollar, come into tariffs, put tariffs on in April and force them into a big move. Their big move, install Mark Carney as the head of the Prime Minister of Canada and attack the SOFR strip during the tariff tantrum of early April. That's what they did. Now, back that off one more line. Now think about that. Once the EU finally knuckles under, because Powell's keeping interest rates high, Trump is setting up the long-term story of having to reform the Fed, but he's not angry at Powell for not cutting rates, because Powell's keeping the Eurodollar system on life support at 4.5%, while the United States economy reorganizes at a higher cost of capital, but everybody else is paying more than 4.5% because synthetic LIBOR is gone. LIBOR's gone. It's all SOFR. They're fucked. They got to belly up to our repo bench. We're buying, to the Fed's repo facility. They're bellying up and buying dollars at maximal cost.
Right.
Now, they knuckle under, and Ursula von der Leyen signs the trade deal. And the dollar versus the euro stops depreciating overnight. So trading sideways since then. Between 115.5 and 116.5 for 6 months. But right after that, the euro-yen cross starts going ballistic to the upside as the Japanese start debasing or devaluing the yen. By doing what? Not defending the long end of the yield curve. And just letting rates rise on the long end of the Japanese yield curve in order to normalize things, to get them back to real positive interest rates for the Japanese domestic economy. And they can manipulate, and they do their thing, and they get in there, and they're allowing it to rise. The Japanese 10 years now at 1.97%. while Christine Lagarde the entire time is running yield curve control across the entire fucking European space in order to keep their banks from blowing up. And she's lost the marginal line of 2.75% on the German 10-year. Yeah, you think something's about to blow? I've been waiting for this shitting thing for 3.5 years.
And you see UBS trying to court regulators here in the United States to try to move their headquarters to the United States.
That's downstream of the Powell bailing out Credit Suisse and UBS and fucking the Europeans out of both of those companies. I covered this back when it happened, and Powell goes in on a Sunday night and negotiates a bailout and a buy of Credit Suisse, and they activate the and it was all about the AT1 cocoa bonds, the conditionally convertible bonds, and those things were all over Europe. $280 billion of these things. And it was the mechanism by which they were going to detonate all these bonds, again, and they're conditionally convertible. Well, the first thing you do is you start a bank run and trash the stock price. And then when they go to try and sell the company or to merge with somebody, they have to get diluted out because these things are senior in the bailout stack. Meaning, in order to sell Credit Suisse to UBS or to merge them, you first got to deal with the cocoa bonds, and that means you either pay them out, which you can't because you don't have any money, or you convert them to equity. And when you do that, you dilute the company to the point where the bondholder of Credit Suisse becomes the majority shareholder of UBS. Now, that was just like 15 to 20 billion of these inside that scenario. So they attacked Credit Suisse in order to start the process to get control of this, fully get control of the Swiss banking system. But there's 280 or 300 billion of these AT1 convertible, conditionally convertible bonds all over Europe. They were going to do this to every goddamn European bank. This was the mechanism by which George Soros was going to get to his perpetual bonds and the digital euro. This was the great taking. And Powell went in on a Sunday night, negotiated this. Credit Suisse said, yep. Oh, and by the way, in Switzerland, yeah, we can make those subordinate. Can't convert them. Oh, you're supposed to convert them. Yeah, fuck off. And didn't consult either Janet Yellen or Christine Lagarde in negotiating that out. Zero Hedge had the story. When I saw that, I'm like, oh.
And what does that sound like?
Powell with his fucking bazooka just nuked the fucking ECB, and Lagarde is still walking funny from that one.
Well, Tom,
got to give it to you loud and dirty, boys, or it doesn't stick.
Man, but no, look, this is
rapidly depreciating assets. Like, why do you think UBS is coming to America? That's payback for us bailing them out, and now we're going to protect UBS. And the Swiss National Bank is already back, captured, is already back at the zero bound. Who's going to replace? You think the Swiss National Bank has the liquidity and the size to replace the Japanese yen as the carry currency? And now what they really want to do is try and force us back to the zero bound to turn the dollar back into the carry currency of choice, which is what they did all during the Obama years to destroy the middle class in America. And why all the debt, and then why we have a dad crisis in the United States today, to bring it back to the dominant theme of the friggin' podcast. Because you guys don't have any defense against this when money's free and all the money's going overseas. The Fed is not a central bank at the zero bound. It's just another Eurodollar pumping mechanism, pump engine. Mm-hmm. It might as well have a flock of seagulls fucking haircut, for Christ's sake, and we're back in the 80s Euro bands.
And like you said, there's so many catalysts that are about to hit us, whether it's Taiwan, Venezuela, all these things that are about to potentially pop off, like you said, over Christmas, Timo. All these things.
Taiwan, I don't think is what's going to happen here. So, you want an interesting thing? This is really funny, right? So, China has no interest in needing to militarily take over Taiwan. Taiwan will just, in 5 or 10 years, Taiwan will just become part of China. Mm-hmm. Same thing with Odessa. Part of the reason why I'm so angry with so many of the pro-Russian anti-war set commentators who I used to spend a lot of time with, and now we don't seem to talk anymore. And it wasn't me doing it, folks. I just happened to notice where they were going. I'm like, guys, don't go there. But here's the thing. When Trump's 28-point peace plan came out, everybody analyzed it exactly the way they wanted to analyze it. Oh, the Russians will never accept this because of this point, and this point, and they just want Odessa and wrong. And then this one said, oh, the Ukrainians will never agree to it. Yes, you're right about that. But do they have any ability to stop that when at the end of the day, if Trump really wants to, he can just pop 2 in the back of the head of Zelensky and be done with it. It's not like we don't have the ability to do that. I know we're short of lead smelters in the United States thanks to Obama, but I know we can get, I know we've got a couple of rounds of 9mm hanging around. Okay? 147 grain jacketed hollow point. That takes care of the problem. Now, that's that side of it. Where was I going? Oh shit. I love 147 grain jacketed hollow points. My favorite 9mm round. So we have where was I?
Yeah, Trump could stop the problem right now, but he's not.
So it's how do we? So I mean, no, it was the macro question. I got to go back 2 points before that. Where was I? I'm so sorry. I hate when I lose my train of thought.
No, it's okay. And you kind of lost me on that one too.
I think the point I was trying to make, and again, I go all, I know stream of consciousness, the Jack Kerouac of geopolitics. The
podcast title. That's awesome.
Well, Taiwan's not going to be the issue.
Oh, right. Taiwan, Odessa, right. The 28-point plan. Right. Thank you, Ryan. I appreciate that. The reason why that 28-point plan was a good framework for Russia is that Russia doesn't need to take Odessa by firing a shot. If you read the whole plan and you actually look through it and you understand what it's going to do, it's going to ensure the breakup of the European Union, that the United States walks away from NATO, that all the NATO and EU guarantees that are written into this deal, none of them are going to matter in 5 years. And the people of Odessa can just turn around and now hold a referendum and rejoin Russia, and the United States is not going to stop it. And the European Union is not going to be in the ability to do anything about it. What's going to happen at 10 Downing Street at that point? They're, you can't do that. That's against the rules-based order. And everybody will like, shut the fuck up, Limey. Like, fuck off.
Right.
The big dog doesn't care. So the Russians don't need to spend any more blood and treasure and the lives of their young men to take Odessa. They don't need to. This is why Doug McGregor is wrong. This is why Judge Knapp is wrong. This is why my friend Larry Johnson is wrong. This is why the Duran is wrong. They're all wrong. That peace plan was clearly going to do for Odessa what China and Taiwan are clearly going to happen. And when you when you go back to China and Taiwan and you say to yourself, that's why China's big move is to move against the Brits at Hong Kong. And just nullify and take Hong Kong 12 years early and have the United States go, okay. And then the Brits don't have what are the Brits going to do about it? And Trump has set all of this up by forcing and showing the real divisions between us and our European partners, to quote Putin. That's the dividend.
Yeah.
And what's the biggest tell that that's on the way? I said this. I saw it the other day. Everybody made a big deal out of it. All the guys on FinTwit were like, "Oh my God, J.P. Morgan is siding with the British, and what's wrong with you?" And I'm like, no, J.P. Morgan moved all of their A traders, their gold desk to Singapore, and I went, "Oh, that means China is getting the green light to take Hong Kong because we're going to pull the Brits out of." We're going to push the Brits out of Singapore. Because what's still in Singapore? The U.S. 7th Fleet.